Alrighty. Suppose we shall get started here. Thank you all for joining us. We're thrilled to have you here. We're going to speak a little bit about migrating Drupal 7 to 10 at the Legal Information Institute. My name's Eric Gullufsen. I'm a systems administrator at LII. And this is my colleague, Vivek Kumar, a programmer at LII. And yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about our process, moving our CMS to the latest version. And so let's get going. So I thought I would take just a few minutes to get a little level set about what we're talking about, what a CMS is. Please forgive me if this is review, which it probably is for you all, but just, go over that just to get a level set a little bit. So in the traditional, simple web request, a user sitting at their browser requests a web page from a website. The web server operating that website goes and looks and sees if there's a file on the file system matching that request and spits it back out over the wire to the client. And that's sort of like in the early days of the web, that's how things worked. And that was it. And so in the example here, we have a user requesting a US code page. And this is how we serve the US code at LII. And our web server just goes and looks and finds on the file system, oh, you want this file, this HTML file, and it simply gives it back to the client, back over the wire, bing, bang, boom. Everybody's happy. But a big breakthrough in the web came when we got web applications, and a CMS is a web application. And so in that architecture, in the second diagram here at the bottom, we see a little bit of a different process. So we've got a user very similarly makes a request, a GET request to the web server, but this web server is configured to use a web application to serve this request. So it uses something called CGI to pass the web request to some code. We're going to be talking about PHP code, but you could really write a CGI script in any language. But anyway, the idea is the web server passes the request to some code, and the code can then go generate the HTML content dynamically. So a little bit different. You don't have to have just an HTML file matching the request. The PHP code can go build the HTML dynamically from a database like MySQL. So that's what we have going on here with the CMS, which is written in PHP. And as I said, it returns the content after building it dynamically, and it serves HTML content back to the client. So just a little bit of background. Sorry if that was review for anybody, but all right. So Drupal is a CMS, and it operates in this bottom way here. And Drupal is a free open source PHP-based content management system and web framework. And it's used all over. It's a very popular CMS. I think it's losing a little bit of its market share to WordPress these days. But nevertheless, it's widely used, especially in government. And Vivek and I poked around a little bit and found some, I Googled what are big websites that use Drupal. And Google gave me back some answers, and I checked that. I found a lot had switched to WordPress. But in any event, we found, a lot of law schools, University of Michigan, Virginia, UNLV, those were all on Drupal 10 already. So huzzah, if you're an alumni of one of those institutions, you can sing your school fight song. They're doing great. And we were pleased to see that. Tesla, they're still on Drupal 7, so not doing as great. But hey, that's okay. Other problems. Yeah, right. Yeah. The NIH, just as we were preparing this presentation this week, they just got onto Drupal 10. So good on them. The EPA in Oxford, I think we're on 9. I can't remember. So Doing pretty well. Great job by them. Anywho, continuing on. At LII, a bit about. Oh, sorry, Vivek. Go. I'm going to turn it over to Vivek now, and he's going to tell you a bit about why we use Drupal.
So why do we use Drupal? It's used by our editorial team to create content for many of our collections. It is a crucial step in laying down the groundwork for our internal system to generate the HTML static content from. And it has also been part of our workflow for over 17 years in counting.
Yeah, just a bit about the history of Drupal at LII. So we've been using it for a long time. In the past, Drupal was used more extensively across more collections. So for instance, the Constitution was based in the CMS, the Code of Federal Regulations, US Code, various collections that we host. We used to do them in the CMS. For some collections now, like the US Code and the CFR, we now scrape those from government sources. We pre-process them and we automatically generate static HTML files for them. And we add a lot of value, like my colleagues, Sylvia and Matt, do a lot of great work pre-processing and adding value to those collections, marking up citations, adding cross links to other collections. It's really great, really cool stuff. But we do still manage some really great collections within the CMS at LII, including gender justice, the WEX legal dictionary, the Supreme Court previews, among others. The federal rules are still in the CMS, and that's a little bit to do with how the government releases updates to those. So no more about that, but anyway, we're still doing a lot within the CMS at LII, and Drupal has proved to be a great solution. I would say we've really been pushing it hard, and we've been a great use case for Drupal at LII. We do not use as many custom modules as CALI does, like what Elmer was talking about yesterday, which made his port to Drupal 10 maybe a bit more difficult, where ours was maybe a little bit more straightforward than CALI's experience. So anywho, I'm going to turn it over to Vivek, and he's going to say a bit about why we needed to migrate to the new version.
One big reason why we upgraded to Drupal 10, as you can see highlighted in red, is that Drupal 7 security support has ended a few months back in January 5th, 2025. So it was very imperative for us to upgrade as soon as possible. So let's talk about some features that Drupal 10 offers compared to 7. So let's talk about the first feature, JSON API. In Drupal 7, there's no native support, but in Drupal 10, you do have, it has native support of JSON API since Drupal 8. Second feature is the text editor. In Drupal 7, it uses TK Editor 4, which at this point is at the end of life stage. And in Drupal 10, it has TK Editor 5, which is the latest version of the TK Editor, and it's a what you see, what you get editor. So you have everything that you need to edit your text, formatting, etc. Templating. So in Drupal 7, Drupal 7 uses the PHP templating engine, which has the .ppl.php format extension. And in Drupal 10, it uses the grid templating engine. If you use Python library Django, it is very similar to Django syntax. So it has the extension .html.grid and framework. So in Drupal 7, it uses the proprietary framework, its own custom framework. But in Drupal 10, that has changed to I use Symfony, and we using it starts from Symfony 6.8. And lastly, security support. So in Drupal 7, it ended in January 5th, 2025. But in Drupal 10, it actually long-term support released to LTS. And it is going to be supported until mid to late 2026. So we have quite a bit of time before we have to do another migration. And it over here.
So I'm not going to spend a ton of time about the nitty-gritty details about our deployment. But the gist is that we had an existing Drupal 7 installation. We created a new Drupal 10 installation, and then we migrated everything into the new from the old. So we had a nice sort of like green field to choose. How do we want to deploy Drupal 10? We considered a lot of things. What we landed on was deploying Drupal 10 to Amazon Web Services Lightsail, which is sort of like in the continuum of managed servers to like just kind of running your code without thinking about a server. It's sort of in the middle. It's you don't have to configure as much as like an EC2 instance on Lightsail, so it's a little bit quicker. And we chose to go with a pre-configured Lightsail image. So it set up PHP, a little web server to sit in front of Drupal, and Drupal itself. So it was very easy to install with the Bitnami package on Oz Lightsail. We chose to not expose our CMS directly. It's proxied through a web server, so that just protects us a little bit more and makes it easier to configure things. And so I'm not going to do too much more about those details, but here's just a little diagram of our web stack here. So I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but we do generate some static HTML content from our CMS, and Vivek is going to speak a little bit about that later. But it's just a little bit faster if you think about it. It's a bit faster for the web server to just go grab an HTML file and spit it out over the wire than it is for Drupal to go connect to a database, retrieve the content, build the HTML, spit it back out. So we do a cool thing where we generate some static HTML content from our CMS. So that just makes things a little quicker, and we can serve things over the wire to our clients just a little quicker. So anywho, we will a user will make a request to our website, and we will proxy them. It's actually pretty hard to get an actual CMS generated page from LII because we generate HTML copies. And that's because, as I said, it's quicker. But you will actually hit our CMS if and only if, you're a logged in user, you're a user trying to log in, of course, or there's no HTML copy available of the page you're trying to get. So anywho, now back to Vivek to talk about a little bit of the details of how we migrated our data from 7 to 10.
So, so the first way we migrated, we used a module called Migrate module. It is the core module that allows the core module means it is provided by Drupal. So it allows you to import data from the old to the latest version. So that means stuff like node, taxonomy, user configuration, settings, etc. It uses the details of your source database connection, so that is your Drupal 7 database. In the table, MySQL table, or in this case, MariaDB, Drupal 10 database. Can be done using web browser GUI, or you can also do it in .CLI, command line interface. And from our experience, it's better you do it in command line interface because doing it in browser GUI has some problems with importing stuff. Lastly, so there is a command that we ran to import all of our tables from Drupal 7 to Drupal 10. So dot migrate import name of the table, pretty simple. And we also have to use the second module to bring over the views, which is equally important as these other stuff to bring over. So it's a same with that module, migrate views module. It's an additional module to bring over views from 7 to 10. Same with that procedure as we did for the other data. So you want the same command, but instead of your table name, you just write the name of the view. In that or .CLI.
All right. So this was a big project. We have tens of thousands of pages of content in our CMS. We had like 1,000 users. Now, not many of those are active at any one time, but a tremendous amount of users. We had a lot of views. We had a lot of keywords that had been assigned to content, which is really cool part about a CMS. You can do like the word cloud, the blog kind of stuff with keywords, and it's really nice organization of your data. So anyway, we had a lot of stuff to move. So a big part of that was doing QA, checking that we had gotten everything. As I said, our migration was a bit more straightforward than CALI's. It was mostly just the content and data. We did have, we had to import our theme, which defines the look and feel, which Vivek is going to speak a little bit about. And we had some custom code in our Drupal 7, but whereas Elmer was talking about thousands of lines of their CALI lessons module yesterday, our custom code was more like an example would be in a Supreme Court preview. It would preview a case, and then we had some custom code that would check every time the page was loaded to see if the case had been decided, and then it would link to the actual decision from the preview of the case. So that was maybe not even 100 lines of code. I don't know. And
I'd like to add on to the point about our custom code. In Drupal 10, we try to do everything in-house.
Yeah.
So we don't have to rely on a ton of code.
Right.
For example, we used our own API to bring stuff that we used to do in Drupal 10 with the custom code. Now it's all in-house.
Yes, good point. Yeah, so we didn't necessarily, as Elmer was talking about porting from the Drupal 7 to Drupal 10 APIs, so like using Drupal's code to do cool stuff. We rather moved that outside of the CMS into when we generate static HTML, we could add those features because we have that added step in our workflow. So that was mostly how we did that. Okay, so we found, we ran into some challenges. We forgot some things. One thing that didn't come through in the migration so much was configuration settings. So we had to go in and manually do some things, which was a bit tedious, but there was no way around it. So we sort of plugged away and tried to restore the functionality that our content editors had been used to in Drupal 7. So we worked closely with our colleagues who are in the CMS every day, using it to try and, we were really cognizant of trying to make it feel as similar to what they had been using for a number of years and not be too disruptive with our upgrade. And as I said, Vivek's going to talk a little bit more about our look and feel and our themes in Drupal 10.
So this is the most important part of our work migrating our transition to Drupal 10, but to also ensure that both our end users and also our editors will have not feel any different moving from 7 to 10. So it was important for us to ensure that we maintain that consistency. So the very first part of the team to Drupal 10 is that we first created a sub team. So we just created a directory in the Drupal 10 instance and bring in the file. So we created a sub team of the core team start, which is completely paired one team, which is trying to be for custom team. We also use an additional default theme, our team, which is for our backend administrative UI. You'll see a picture about it in a second. We also imported CSS and JavaScript files into our web directory of the instance. So that's where we got our game design. And now we're going to get to the quick templating. That is where that was allowed us to format the data of our content to adapt to our team. To help to structure and adapt content data to a team. Lastly, it allows editor to preview the content as it will appear on the status site. So here you can see an example that is using the cloud team of the admin view or from the eyes of the editor. You have the usual text box with title, keywords, etc. Then we have the body paragraph, it is using the TK file. Of course, it is the TMS view. You can tell that it is the TMS, not a static type, because it's a hard to miss black bar at the top. So where do we go from here? So here we get to our new workflow that we updated with advent of Drupal 10. So here you have the TMS view. One thing that is provided are the ability to use the REST API JSON. So if you provide a query in your search for formatted for JSON, you get the JSON metadata of our content. That is very useful because you don't have to web scrape the CMS page or either raw HTML, you get the JSON. And we get that JSON and send it to our Python code, our API. And that is where we do our little pre-processing. We take our hammer and take all the JSON and combine them into one fully functional HTML page content. We build it out so that's what we see in the final output. And there's some additional stuff, but after those are done, we send them to our file system, which is where our static HTML content are stored. And we send them to a web server to browser and then to the user. It is the final output of the page. You can see it's pretty similar to the CMS view, but there's some subtle differences. I'll hand it over to Eric.
All right. So how long did this take? We did this in-house. Vivek and I and my colleagues worked at this for maybe 6 months or so. We began in July of 2024. And this was just beginning, thinking about how are we going to do this? And is the schema of the database that much different from 7 to 10? At first, I was thinking, can we just use the same database and just update the code? And no, that's of course not. That was not going to be viable. And then I tried some other things before I arrived at the Migrate module, and that proved to be a clincher. I mean, that made things. I just would love to tip my cap to the Drupal developers of the Migrate module because they saved our bacon, and it was super nice to use their code to move. It was just a matter of moving the data from an old organization in Drupal 7 to the new sort of way it's organized in the Drupal 10 schema. And they really took so much work to make that easy. And we really, really appreciate them. Okay. As I said, ours was sort of more straightforward. We just had to move all of our content, our users, and it took maybe 6 months. We were at work when we approached January 5th, which was when we needed to, switch the tracks onto Drupal 10. We were at work, we were trying to find every little bug that was going to occur once we released Drupal 10. And we worked really closely. I have to thank Nicole McCarthy and Val Kimber at LII for really proofing out our new Drupal 10, making sure that it was going to be workable for them. And they took just a lot of time to help us get this right. So really appreciate that. And the benefits of this API, the big one, a huge one, as Vivek already touched on, is being able to get a JSON representation of our content just out of the box with Drupal 10 was terrific. And Elmer touched on this a little bit yesterday about, okay, now you can get your content out of your CMS in JSON through this REST API that Drupal 10 provides. That opens the door to a lot of cool stuff. And you could develop an app outside of the CMS with this access to your content that's very easy. And as Vivek touched on it, made it really nice to generate from our CMS our static HTML content. So that was really cool to work with, and we really appreciated that in the new version of Drupal. Let's see, what else have we got here? Oh yeah, we were able to sort of eliminate some custom modules and using some just things that are built into Drupal now. And lastly, We have a little bit of an easier to manage Drupal 10 setup in our new deployment on Oz Lightsail. Just because you can get sort of PHP updates and the operating system to update a little bit easier there than we had before. So that's going to save us a little bit because that's us doing that stuff. So we're happy about that. And Vivek, sorry, I almost took your slide again. Vivek's going to talk about wrapping up here.
So in retrospect, we learned a lot about our migration. We learned a lot about by doing the migration from down to 10, and it'll be very helpful for when we have to do it again. In a year or so for Drupal, hopefully when Drupal comes out, which it'll be very helpful and easy. It also gave us an opportunity to improve and streamline our existing workflow. I'll refer to the diagram again. So we have the REST API, and now to be clear, we don't do it for every collection. We do it for some of the collection that has a lot of that. But that will offer us flexibility when we have to build it. Some collections like federal rules, they still use the same old approach, rather than to approach as we did during Drupal 7. Yeah, so we were also very successful on our goal. We got it right before the deadline. And have we have to ensure timely transition to Drupal 10 for both the end user as well as our editor. So there's no disruptive experience and like nothing has ever changed. We want to offer thanks to our colleagues at LII.
Yes, yeah. Thanks a lot for bearing with us. Craig, Sarah, Nicole, Val, Matt, everybody, really appreciate you guys. And while Vivek said it went smoothly, there were definitely some hiccups. Nothing too major, but I really appreciate their patience as we sort of.
Better say Sylvia too.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sylvia as well.
She's watching.
Yes, sorry, Sylvia. So yeah, everybody at LII just really helped us with this, and couldn't have done it without you. And we're just pleased to sort of have it in the rearview mirror, I guess, for now. But anyway, I think that's all we've got for you, and thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? Sure, Craig.
I've got one for anybody out there who might be contemplating having to upgrade like from 8 or 9 to 10.
Yes.
As you presented it, a reasonable person could be like, wow, it took these two people 6 months.
Yeah.
Big website, a lot of pages.
Yep.
You did not made a nod to the fact that after you figured out that migration was the way to go, it got a lot easier.
Yeah.
So somebody who's out there that's got, say, 1,000 pages or fewer, not a lot of custom code, has to do a migration. Like, how long can they reasonably? How many person hours can they reasonably expect if it goes smoothly to? So they're not scared. But
Great question.
Of 2 developers full time.
Great question. So we were, I myself was fairly inexperienced with Drupal. I had worked with WordPress before and a old .NET CMS called Orchard. So I was familiar with the concepts, but arriving at the Migrate module probably took me longer than it should have, to be honest. And but perhaps if I had known the route to take, I think it could have been done in a lot less than 6 months, probably. And we did sort of, we really considered a lot of different deployment options. But just migrating the data, I do not think would take too long, provided that you don't have too many custom modules. Because porting those to the new Drupal API is difficult. We didn't have to contend with that as much as Elmer did. And so that complicated things for him. But shoot, I would say, Vivek has become an excellent Drupal developer. And I think he could probably open a Drupal consultancy like today with how deep he's gone in.
Please don't.
Yeah. But I think if you had somebody like him, with the experience he's got now, you could get this in for the sort of, site you described.
If I might
A
add.
month, yeah.
Part of the reason it took quite a bit long to migrate up top because the schema from Drupal 7 to 10 was a little different.
Yeah, yeah.
So that part of it is like,
Great point. Forgive me, I don't know the exact details, but I do think there was a big gap between 7 and 8. And the schema of the database for 8 is much more similar to 10 than 7 to 10. So if you were already on 8, it might be a lot less, it might be a lot easier, but I would say probably a month if you had 1,000 pages, and somebody who knew Migrate module is the way to go. Just let her rip with that. But yeah, thanks. Yeah. Alright.
7 to 10, you didn't go for like 7 to 9 or something, then 9 to 10.
Yeah, we went right to 10. Yeah, I'm just, I just sort of picked the LTS version that was at the time in August 24. That was the highest LTS version that I could go to, and I wanted something that was gonna get us into 2026 before we had to go to 11. If we had maybe begun it later in 2024, I'm not sure if there's a long-term support version for 11 yet.
when we worked on it, there was no long-term support for 11 at that time.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there is now even. I know 11 is out, but I think you have to be patching pretty quick. But yeah, I don't know, to be honest, I didn't really consider just moving to 8. I noticed some of the sites I mentioned earlier, I can't remember which ones, maybe the EPA, they had gone to 9 recently, not 10. So I'm not sure what their reasoning was there, but yeah, we just bit the bullet, yeah.
Just a few weeks ago, NIH.gov was in Drupal 7.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we also we just checked 2 days ago that they just upgraded to Drupal 10. It looks like everyone's trying to move away from 7.
But yeah, I can't say that's curious. That's a great question. It would be interesting to see if our lives would have been a little easier if we just went to 8 first and then went from there. But no, we just wanted to sort of bite off the whole cookie and go to 10, I guess.
When have we ever done anything the easy way?
Yeah, right. Sure.
Elmer talked yesterday that he used a little bit of AI to assist his migration. And
Yeah.
I was wondering if that ever kind of occurred to you, or is like, no, we don't want to put it out.
You know what? It did not occur to us, to be honest, and I wish I would have sent him an email about how are you doing this? And because besides Copilot, I think he was using to get a quick port or a start on a port from 7 to 10. Maybe we would have investigated that if we had more extensive custom modules to work with, but mostly we could just hand those to Vivek and say, hey, can you port this? It's a couple hundred lines, and he's just that good, he just
I had to
BI,
realize
we
what
need
he on
BI.
yeah, we got Vivek, yeah.
I had to realize what's in all documentation, which is pretty unreliable.
Yeah. But it might have helped us.
Yeah.
It could have helped us, yeah, to just like, oh, that looks okay. It's supposed to, you do the port in AI and you say, okay, that's what it's supposed to look like. Those are the sort of like namespaces and libraries I need. Okay, looks good. Or even like, oh, now in Drupal 10, that's what importing this package looks like, yada, yada. That could have been very useful. And one thing we didn't use that Elmer shined on yesterday was DDev to do development environments. That would have been really great. We sort of just had development environments locally on our laptops that we could work with. We did deploy some images in Docker locally to just sort of play with this stuff. And then we had a number of sort of testing deployments where we tested the migrations, and it got really messy, and we sort of learned how to do things. And so there was a proliferation of trying things, and a lot of different light sail instances where we stood this up and tried to break it and tried to get our data in. But yeah, anyway, I do wish that we had sort of collaborated with Elmer a little more, but nevertheless, his was a lot more complex, so we're feeling for him a little bit, but anyway.
Finding like hiccups when you're doing the migration.
See, we did, yes, we did. One thing, uh, yeah, it can get quite messy when you are defining the migrations, using the migrate module. And we would get failures, like especially with our views, even with the ancillary views migrate module, it just couldn't bring over some of our views. So for whatever reason, we had to just go re-implement those and it's not, maybe it's not the most pretty or sophisticated, but we just got in there and redid the view in Drupal 10. But for like we found that for the basic stuff like users, our nodes, which are like pages, and taxonomy terms, those mostly went okay. I think we did have some failures with some keywords, taxonomies. And we did, let's see, oh, one thing, this is a little in the weeds, but we use Drush, the Drupal command line tool to do a lot of this stuff, which is a really cool tool. And but when you run Drush, migrate, import this table, your users or something, there's a switch on there, a parameter to the tool called execute dependencies, I think. So like if you're bringing in content and it needs to import taxonomy terms first to use in that content, that switch execute dependencies will do that in the correct order. So I really wish I would have read the manual a little more closely before I started using it, but I eventually landed on that. And that made it really nice because you didn't have to figure out the order of what to import. You could just run it with execute dependencies and it would sort of figure it out for you. But yeah, I'm trying to think what other, oh, as I said, the configuration for some things didn't come through in the migration. So some of the stuff like which content type gets which editor in the admin view, that was sort of fouled up in our Drupal 10. Let's see, what else didn't some of the configuration. So anyway, there was a lot to sort of button up and check. And our users were our content editors were super helpful about flagging those things and being like, oh, where's this keyword is missing or various type, or I'm trying to create a page with a keyword. It won't let me create the keyword as I create the page. I've got to go do this keyword first, then create the page. So things like that, we had to sort of manually reconfigure. So anyway, yeah.
I'm tied 2020.
Yeah. Let's see, as far. Yeah, we just went in and mostly manually, like, let's see, some user permissions did not come through. I'm trying to think of some of the like weird little things that we had to jump on. But no, for the most part, we did just sort of manually go in and reconfigure rather than trying to force the command line import. There might have been a solution using Drush and the migrate module that we just weren't invoking it correctly. So
SAPs that came in,
I'm not even aware. Yeah, cool.
put the data so that you could.
Okay. Do you define those in YAML or something? Or like, okay, I think I have heard of those. Yeah, but we didn't jump into those too much. Yeah.
Define it.
Okay, okay. Okay. I gotcha. I gotcha.
So
I do remember reading though about those in the docs, but we didn't and I do remember, yeah, you could define some YAML, I think, and arrive at it that way, but we did not. No, we were sort of under the cosh, so we were like, let's just whatever is clever, let's just get this done. Yeah, we gotta go in and just recreate the view, and then so be it. And happily, a lot of that stuff was pretty check a checkbox, you know, or like to reconfigure that. So it was kind of a bummer that that didn't come through, but it wasn't too bad. For the functionality that people were used to, yeah. Right, Matt, did you?
Well, you mentioned, how did it compare to the
Oh, great question. Vivek touched on this a tiny bit. But we have a little bit of pre-processing that happens at that stage when we use some Python code to basically scrape our own CMS and create HTML content from requests to the CMS. Well, we use the JSON API now. We're not really scraping. We're just kind of doing the API for the content. And like, as I mentioned before, one thing we do at that stage is do a little bit, add some value, like my canned example is for the bulletin previews of Supreme Court cases, when we generate the CMS now will not tell you, the CMS copy will not tell you if that case has been decided. But once we generate our static HTML at that step, we check, oh, has this case been decided? And then we add that to the static HTML. But man, that's a great question. Besides that, I can't think of too many differences between, maybe I'm just blanking, but between the CMS copy and the static HTML. As far as I'm concerned, it's just a lot better to serve static HTML if you can, because it's so much quicker over the wire, you know. But sorry, go ahead.
It also one export out. We want to show our TMS when we don't have static page code. For example, we have a page for searching all the request collection.
Yes.
We don't
Yes.
want to unnecessarily export the TMS to the wider web.
Yes.
That we don't want to export it to attackers.
Right.
Vulnerability.
It's a big attack surface, the CMS for hackers. Like, all you have to do is look at a web server logs and see them trying to hack WordPress pages over and over again, hitting your login page and trying to brute force it. Yeah, as we're not exposing the CMS directly, as little as possible, I think is a good idea. And if you get, and Elmer mentioned this yesterday, we had a very similar thing happen at LII where they were sort of hitting our CMS with requests so much that it was stacking up processes and slowing down our CMS. So if you can serve static HTML, you can maybe avoid some of those CMS requests that can stack up. So but that was a very malicious crawler that was cycling through IPs. So they were difficult to sort of battle. Go ahead.
Like how are you taking snapshots of like the database?
Well, we used like Oz's imaging to take snapshots because we're deploying to Oz. So we can just take a snapshot within the Oz web GUI, basically. Which we were doing for Drupal 7, so we had copies of the MySQL data. I've used MySQL dump a lot, or the MySQL shell tools to dump data a lot. And like the new MySQL shell tools are super quick to dump all. So I use those a lot if I want to like snap a database. But that's a great question. I mean, to get the latest stuff from our content editors, we were able to not really we didn't really have to stop them too much from creating content because the Migrate module is really pretty quick at bringing that content over. So I think we only had to tell them to stop for a day or two while we brought the latest stuff into Drupal 10, and then it was there, and we could work with it from there. But yeah, we do have automated snapshots of our database being taken just within Oz, makes it really nice.
Static pages, the HTML.
Yes, man, great question. And actually, prior to that, in Drupal 7, there was a nice caching configuration that we would like to recreate. Yeah, there is an easier way to do caching and have the CMS create the HTML. Now, when we generate our static HTML for some collections, we add some value at that step. Which it would maybe take some thinking to do within the CMS. You just have to write it in PHP, which is no big deal, but yes, that's a great point. There is well, actually, I haven't looked into it in Drupal 10 too much, but you can have the CMS cache content. Now, that was a bit complicated by the fact that we're running Drupal on a separate server from our main Nginx web server. So you'd have to get the cached content over to another server. So it's a little easier when the web server and Drupal are on the same box. So anyway, but yeah, we would like to look into that. That would be very nice, but the cached HTML doesn't necessarily have the added stuff that we do when we generate our HTML copies using Python. So yeah. But actually in Drupal 7, we did have some caching just automatically occurring, which was nice. Very cool. Yeah. Right. Oh, I guess you better sign out. No.